As Mazda's powerful rotary engine takes center stage, raising eyebrows and sparking debate, the question arises, could this revolutionary technology redefine the landscape of the EV industry? At an interesting time when most automakers are facing the future with newer engine systems that offer better cost and efficiency, Mazda is looking into the past by revisiting its old and abandoned rotary engine. The rotary engine is an internal combustion engine using a different process. They've announced a new rotary engine with impressive features that could very well shake up the entire EV industry. But why take the risk of reviving a failed system? And what makes Mazda so confident that it would succeed? Right now, it's the biggest and most powerful vehicle that Mazda has ever built. Join us as we explore the story behind the engine, the stunning upgrades they've made, and how it's expected to work. Rotors, which function as pistons, and fixed pinions, which determine the direction of the rotors. The history of the rotary engine, the inspiring story behind Mazda's new engine, goes way back to 1925. Ford's Model T at the time dominated the roads in terms of sales and performance, but had a heavy four-cylinder engine that easily knocked and overheated. GM's Chevrolet Superior series were pretty much dead on arrival, because they had engines that weren't very reliable. Dodge cars were among the most powerful, but always rattled due to unbalanced piston parts, and had annoying engines that needed frequent oiling and produced a lot of noise with overly excessive vibrations. The auto industry desperately needed a smoother and more efficient solution, and that was when the rotary engine came in. This engine was promised by famous engineer and visionary Felix Wankel, and he promised to accomplish this through NSU, a small German firm specializing in building the cheapest cars and motorcycles on the market. Felix Wankel was a famous engineer born way back in 1902, who dreamed of proving everything he had learned about traditional engines wrong. As early as age 17, he already had his idea for what would later become known as a rotary engine. This machine would not use pistons like regular car engines, but would rather spin in a circular motion that made engines lighter, smaller, and smoother than the regular ones that cause a lot of problems. When the idea struck his mind, Felix wasted no time in drawing out his ideas in a way he believed would never produce vibrations and loud sounds like most engines did. So from late 1925 to 1937, Felix got to work on making his wild dream a reality. But as expected, things weren't as simple as he envisioned. Though he had successfully built a lab in Heidelberg with the best engineers his small pockets could afford, it wasn't until 1951 when he finally got the chance to take his work seriously. This was primarily because of the Second World War. And when things finally settled down in Germany, he didn't have the funds to keep his lab going and had to work for another company called NSU. And thanks to their expertise in making cars and motorcycles, Felix finally had access to much better tools and all the money he needed to bring his engine to life. Now this was where things got interesting. By late 1957, after years of dedication and hard work, Felix Wankel's engine ran for the first time. The company watched in amazement as the engine ran in a triangle-shaped rotor spinning inside an oval chamber, instead of pistons moving up and down like it was with traditional engines. Better yet, it created the same power cycles, but with fewer moving parts and less weight. This meant less fuel consumption and much better efficiency. At first, the machine overheated and almost fell apart, but thanks to his partner Hans Deripaschke, who made some adjustments to his earlier models, this addition worked perfectly without any of the issues that plagued the more popular engines made by Ford and GM. It was publicly demonstrated by NSU through a press conference not long after, and the event was a huge success that quickly got the attention of much bigger companies. Most of them wanted to closely observe and take notes on how the engine works so they could produce a better version of it by themselves. But only one company wanted to support NSU to make more editions of this engine and improve them with its bigger resources. Interestingly enough, the company that wanted to help them wasn't a German firm, but a Japanese car maker based in Hiroshima called Mazda. This company was headed by Tsunatsuda, and he saw the engine's potential to make Mazda's best cars stand out globally from the much bigger brands. Even though Mazda was much bigger than NSU, it too was known for making budget cars that were barely impressive to anyone. Their success was based on luck and affordability, and different new competitors were rising to take their spot. Tunai Matsuda hoped the Wankel rotary engine would be the key to rising higher in the auto industry, and for a while he was correct. The first rotary engine made by Mazda was the 1967 Cosmos Sport 110s. It was relatively smaller than most marketed high-performance cars and ran on a twin-rotor engine. Many Japanese users claimed it was fun to drive, and it grew so popular in Europe and America because of how well it performed, despite being much smaller than most performance cars. As the years went by, Mazda continued improving their rotary engine and used it in upcoming models like the RX-3 and beyond. But perhaps the most famous rotary car was the RX-7 that launched in 1978. And it was the car that made rotary engines popular because it was one of the lightest, fastest, and most affordable automobiles in the mid-range market. It was reportedly so good that it garnered a cult following that lasted for decades. It was so successful that the RX series didn't launch the next generation until 2003, with the RX-8. This was a four-door sports car that was also marketed as a sports vehicle, but with more practical and impressive features for the average Joe. Mazda was still relatively successful with this launch, but sadly enough, it was also at this point where the cracks began to show. Even though the more recent RX cars had the coolest designs and performance, each upgrade caused the machine to burn more gas than piston engines. On top of that, the engines weren't durable enough. This was because of the apex seals that kept the rotor inside the chamber. Due to the constant circular motion of the engine parts, the seals wore out quite easily, causing the cars to gradually slow down in speed and overall performance with each passing year. Every upgrade tried to fix this by simply cranking up the performance of the newer models. And while that made up for the wear and tear of the engines, it also increased carbon emissions in the RX-6, 7, and 8 models. It also didn't help that the world was becoming increasingly aware of the dangers of carbon emissions on our climate during the 90s and early 2000s. Because of this, many countries came up with very strict rules on the kind of cars that were allowed into their borders. By 2012, when the RX-8 failed to meet most newer standards, Mazda stopped making rotary-powered cars entirely. All these issues beg the question, how did such a genius idea on paper quickly turn into a corporate nightmare for Mazda? What were the biggest flaws of this engine? And how does Mazda's newest edition promise to address each of them? As we shall see, most of the answers lie in the engines.